Hello, I'm Glenn W. Hunter, and with me today is Miss Tamika J. Carter, and together we are Building Girl Champs. And in today's topic, revealing girls' inner strength. Tamika, as we're thinking about the challenges our young ladies are meeting right now in society and also in academia and the other places they sort of have where their mind is, inner strength, is that really what they need at this point in time?
Sure. I mean, they can do some push-ups and get some outer strength as well. But they do. They've got to have inner strength. That's mentally, emotionally, socially, psychologically, spiritually. They have to start really drawing on the things that they've been learning or that they were taught by mentors and find where the strength is within themselves to pull through.
You know, there's so much observation as we talk about, feminine power and core strength and the idea that these young ladies have so much just influence on their environment, and a lot of times that goes unnoticed and maybe even unrealized. But I think right now, the work you're doing is providing young ladies, their families, with the tools to express that inner strength. I think that's going to make a big difference in just how some of the young ladies in the Inland Empire are developing. Do you think that that strength that you're putting in them literally has the opportunity to flourish even in these difficult times?
Certainly, I certainly hope so. And I'm not putting it in them. I truly believe, I say this all the time, our girls are gifted. They were born with it. Some of it's been buried, some of it's never just really come out. But I'm harvesting it, right? So I am helping them to take a look at what's already inside of them, what their strengths are. I use a strength-based perspective. It's not all what you can't do, what you didn't do, but it's what are you good at and how do I use that to help you be better. So that inner strength that I harvest is really just drawing on what's already inside of these young ladies.
So thinking about that what's inside of them, as a mental health professional, I'm going to have you use your social emotional learning lens. But what coping skills should our young queens be developing to be stronger when society returns back to normal, whatever post-pandemic normal is going to be?
So that's a lot. There's a lot of coping skills. And the thing about coping skills, it's really important to know is that it's what works for you. So when I'm working with my clients, we try different things. Some things that are, textbook, and some things we make up on the fly. And they go home, they get to try those out. They get to have whatever crazy situations occur over the course of the week. And at our next session, we get to evaluate how well those coping skills actually work. Now, because I am an existential and humanistic oriented therapist, I'm always hands down going to tell you the first coping skill, the first thing to do is be mindful. Mindfulness is the thing right now. It's hot right now and it needs to be. Mindfulness is just the result of us finally accepting that our minds and our bodies are connected. And if we want our bodies to perform well, our minds have to be healthy also. So when I'm working with girls, this means making sure they're aware of their emotions. I want girls, by the time they're done working with me, to be able to identify several positive and negative emotions, not just happy, sad, mad. Give me disoriented. Tell me what confused feels like. Tell me what flustered feels like. Sometimes people make up words. Tell me what toe down feels like. Tell me what those feel like. And that's really important because a lot of times, again, young ladies just kind of have two emotions, kind of two go-to: sad, mad. I've heard a lot of them say, I'm mad, sad. So it's important that they can identify those, because the more they can identify those, they can pick out where they're coming from. So again, with mindfulness and emotions, you want to know how those are showing up in their bodies. Anger a lot of times shows up as heat, feeling hot in their faces. Some feel hot in their hands, they sweat. Anxiety shows up as knots in one's stomach. Sometimes it shows up as headaches. Some people grind their teeth. And so being mindful, teaching them to cope by just first being mindful of what's even going on, that's step one. Step two is, again, recognize those strengths. Women, by and large, are more right-brained than men. We're more analytical. Use that. Use that. Think through, process through, work through, plan through, and use that, because that is a strength. Now, that's not all young ladies, But if that's you, if you're a planner, a thinker, put it together kind of person, a problem solver, use that in this situation. Don't just lay those attributes down because COVID happened and we're panicking. Go back to those things. Lastly, I'm going to say my final thing is really one of my favorite things to say, which is it ain't right, but it's real. So how are we going to deal? That's all about resilience. That's all about acceptance. It's all about acceptance and commitment. Um, this situation ain't right. This is awful. This is crazy. Like, I have to remind people, you have permission to feel badly about the world right now, about our nation, and about the way things are. It's not beautiful. It's transitional, hopefully, but you have a right. And so I tell people, it may not be right. This is all going down, but it is real, right? It's in our face. It's happening. Social injustices are happening. Poverty is happening. Hunger is happening. School confusion is happening. So that's just the real of it. It ain't right, but it is real. So how are we going to deal? And so the last piece of that, again, is that resilience, is that coping, is that figuring through, is that thinking through, not just getting stuck in flight, fright, or freeze. So really just with girls, again, it's important for them to harness their strengths, their abilities to communicate, their ability to be analytical, and mostly just getting them to a place of mindfulness where they can understand what's going on with them. And so that if they need to make changes, they understand what the impact those changes had on their emotional and social functioning.
As you're talking about the fact that, there is just a lot of elements coming back against them as they're transitioning, not just as young ladies, but also into society, and a society that's very fluid right now with regards to how well it's going to behave. We've talked previously, just about how students have to keep coping with a shifting reality. And so now we have an environment where all of this inner strength is with these young ladies, but physically they're still cooped up. You're not just running around to the park to play all the time, so that you're still cooped up. There's a lot of fear and distrust in the community. Are authorities being honest with us? What's really going on out there? Because I'm in here all the time. So with all those elements working against them, how can we prepare our young ladies to show more, well, frankly, more confidence upon returning back into a physical environment, a physical school system when the pandemic eases?
Wow. God, that's almost as hard as figuring out what to do in this pandemic. So what I would say, and again, I have daughters, right? So, and they range, please believe I've got 3 of them, and they range in their attitudes towards school. And that's a very important component, right? So when I'm working with youth, I check out their attitude towards school, because before their academic ability shows up, their attitude really determines how well they perform or how much they try, if they have a more growth mindset, or if they're more fixed in thinking they cannot achieve and they never will. So preparing them means kind of paying attention to those things. It means academically reviewing and reinforcing things with them. It means reviewing their work, reviewing their class load, reviewing, kind of just having a conversation with them about how teacher relationships have been. Have they been in touch with their teachers? Has the teachers responded? How did they perform before COVID? That's another important one, because when there's been a shift, it's a lot of times it's easy to kind of lose who you are in that shift or that transition. And that can be with, of course, this pandemic. It can be with anything from menopause to puberty to changing schools. Shifts always make us kind of reassess our identity, reassess who we are and what's important to us. So for young ladies, it's going to be really important to remind them, okay, I'm not counting all this COVID time against you. I remember how you showed up. I remember how you were performing way back in 2019 before, 2020, before March came, because helping them to remember their power points, their strength points, the times that they've been successful and their big victories, that is what's going to push them to draw on that inner strength. And that's where they'll draw it from. And so getting them to be confident in those areas really just, again, means drawing on the strengths and looking at what the obstacles were to those things. So one thing I might do with a young lady is, ask her about, how did that science project, remind me of the worst science project ever, the best science, whichever one. And ultimately what I'm wanting to do in that is not only celebrate the victories, but help her to pay attention to all of the obstacles, because we don't achieve anything without obstacles. And so I need her to develop her confidence by remembering that I had obstacles before and this is how I dealt with it. Or bringing that mindfulness bit back in. I had obstacles and I shut down for a week before I even got started on the science project, and mentally I shut down, and if I hadn't done that, I maybe would have gotten a better grade. So when you're reviewing those things with them, you're going to see those points where, again, they have weaknesses, where they have strengths, things that you can build on, and things you just want to work with. So that's kind of my piece there. That's academically. Socially is another piece. Socially, a lot of kids have kind of lost contact with their friends. I wish that schools had better opportunities for kids to connect socially throughout this pandemic. I've seen a few things that schools have done, maybe school counselor-led things. But for kiddos, that's their primary environment for socialization. So as we talk about kids, like even wanting to get back to school now, or we're wanting them back, they're not excited about going back to learn. They want to see their friends. So we can prepare them for that by making sure they have, connected with those friends. Our little computer nerd babies, a lot of times they forget you have to like talk to people. So you have to remind them of those things. I find myself even with mine having to remind them of the conventions of like, manners, right? Because they haven't had to use manners. I got elbows on tables and loud audible burps. So I think that some of that's going to be important as we're getting kids to fit back in with one another socially, that they have to kind of check those things that they were able to do when they were in their room by themselves. Like we're going back to Earth or humanity now, so let's start acting like humans again. So for me, that's really what's going to be important. Again, checking in with them academically, reviewing with them, making sure they remember where their strong points and their victories and their obstacles were, and then getting them connected with just communication and talking with friends again, so that when they do show up to school, they can jump right back in.
Different tools, for lack of a better word, that you articulated, not just an understanding where our young ladies are, both mentally and emotionally, but really how they get back to progressing. Um, I got to think that reconnecting to their inner strengths is more important than ever. How do you get that inner strength, their skills, their passions back out to the forefront so they're pursuing those?
You gotta ask them what their confidence is. So in my book, I write about confidence because it's the first letter of class. And so confidence comes from a number of places with young ladies, with Black girls, even different places. And so one of those places, one of the first ones a lot of young ladies are born into or grow up in the family is you have confidence in a higher power. Who are you? And who does your religion or your spirituality say you are? What does it say about when you face challenges? What does it say about difficult times? So uh, unbelievably, there are actually a lot of young people who have relationships with a higher power. And so they do find their confidence and their inner strength in that relationship or in whatever promises or whatever it has been told to them. So a lot of times it's just drawing on that. They can go that. For some, again, it's their past experiences. They know that they're a go-getter. They're maybe the underdog who always comes up. So just kind of that's part of their identity. And that's one way that they can draw on inner strength to basically build some confidence. Um,
I want you to stay with us a little bit longer on that inner strength to draw their confidence, because that confidence is really, as individual of a characteristic that it is something that in common really drives them towards success. I mean, they believe they can, and you do want to flame that, correct?
well, definitely. So that because their self-efficacy, their ability to look at how well they've actually done and have an honest conversation with themselves um, is a confidence builder. So, when I think about girls, I think about Dr. Ford. Dr. Donna Y. Ford is a researcher and scholar who came up with something called the Ford Female Achievement Model for Excellence. So in that model, she actually lists 4 different domains of things that girls need. Those domains are psychological, socio-emotional, academic, and ding, 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 cultural.
Ooh.
So under each of those, there are several things that you need to draw on. Socio-emotional, some of those things are independence. If you have a young lady who is very independent, then it's kind of bittersweet, right? Because you can help her draw on that independence to push herself to be successful. But young ladies that are that way a lot of times have struggles when they face a challenge because they've been so independent, they've been so good at everything that they lose it when they're not, and they don't know how to work hard or work harder or ask questions or dig deeper. A lot of times they're just used to it coming to them. So that's something on the socio-emotional front. On the psychological front, you want them to be goal oriented. I work on SMART goals with young ladies all the time. I work on it with adults as well, because a lot of times we have imaginations and wishings, but they're not goals. So as we're looking at girls and going back to school, something I'm having to tell people, know where to cut your losses. One of my kiddos realized there was an elective she didn't need. She cut her losses. She said, it's okay. I'm going to graduate. I'm going to be fine. So it's a time to really reassess what our standards are for our kids and what their standards are for themselves, and not to impose our stuff on them, because at the end of the day, they have to live their lives. But when we're doing that, we just want to make sure that their goals are aligned to whatever those standards are for themselves. So that they're setting short, long, midterm goals that are SMART goals, smart, measurable, attainable, all that, time sensitive, so that they can actually accomplish them. And then again, that accomplishment builds more self-efficacy, builds more confidence. I won't get too deep into the academic piece, but I do definitely want to touch on the cultural piece, because a lot of times we do leave that out when we're working with kiddos. We think that it's all about socio-emotional and just skills and plus minus. But there is a huge piece of this that is understanding, for me, like even for me, understanding that Dr. Mamie Phipps Clark was one of the first Black female psychologists who pioneered the doll study that is behind a lot of what we understand about colorism and self concept and identity based on colorism. So knowing that someone ahead of you in your culture, in your race, did this thing, walked this, this line that you're trying to walk, is really empowering. And I always have. So in class, we study the stories of these women. I ain't trying to give away all my secrets, but we definitely study the stories of these women, and they're able to identify themselves. Some of them were single, some of them were poor, some of them were rich, some of them were multiracial. They all had something. And so one of the things I really like to do is have girls look at that, look at themselves, and then see, okay, well, if she could do this, and she did this in 1930, right? Well, I can surely pull this off. And so that's just a really, really important thing for me to do with them, because I like to connect them with their culture, connect them with cultural pride and their heritage, and understand that like they come from a very mighty race. So I want them to draw on that to continue.
Wow. Tamika, you have so much packed into that, everything from their inner confidence to resilience to their cultural identity, that I could just continue to absorb the many facets of developing our young women as they progress with confidence through this period. An easier way would be just to have our audience contact you. How do they reach you?
You can find me at tamikajcarter.com. That's Tamika, middle initial J, last name Carter.com. If you go to that website, you can go right to the homepage and click the link to book a consultation. We can talk about your daughter, we can talk about the mother, we can talk about whomever we need to talk about that helps your daughter and you be better. That can include groups for girls. It can also, again, include parent coaching. So just go ahead and go to my website, again, tamikajcarter.com, book a consultation, and we'll figure it out from there.
Outstanding. Once again, Tamika J. Carter, bringing incredible insight, especially in this time when our young ladies need to hear that voice of authority and confidence. I'm Glenn W. Hunter, and as we go through, oh goodness, this path going through the social issues, obviously the health-related issues, and the academic issues, I'm glad we have professionals like Tamika that are able to help clarify some of the mist that's encompassing it. I'm Glenn W. Hunter, and in always in parting, I wish and encourage each and every one of you to please be safe. Thank you.